Welcome to today's webinar entitled Manage the Item, Improve the Process. My name is Billy Zadig, Manager of Special Projects for APA. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The webinar recording will be posted to the APA website later this afternoon. Please visit the APA website for archived webinars that are available to everyone for continuing education credits recognized by local, state, and federal professional entities. Professional Continuing Education and AIA-CLU certificates are being offered for today's program. If you are an AIA professional, please send an email to me at Billy, B-I-L-L-I-E, @APA.org, along with your AIA membership number if you have not done so in the past. Those who indicated they wanted a certificate at registration and meet the requirements will receive certificates later this afternoon. All attendees are in listen-only mode. Please type your questions in the chat box and they will be answered in the order they are received. If we run out of time and we still have questions, responses will be sent directly to the person asking the question by our presenter. If you are just calling in, make sure you send me an email at billy@apa.org so I can send you a certificate if you would like one. The system will only recognize you if you log in. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn this over to Dirk Welch. Dirk, take it away.
Thank you, Billy. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's session on being able to manage the key and the asset. And we'll dive in. We'll just start diving in right now and dive into what is the true risk or cost of not properly managing keys on campus or vehicles or equipment that you may have. We look at really 6 areas. The first one is increased administration. It may be very arduous, very time-consuming when we're looking at trying to manage a key or an asset at our university or campus facilities. Maybe it takes multiple people to administer just maybe a simple key to a closet or a vehicle key that maybe need to be used for a short period of time. The second one is the lost time or locating a missing item. If a lost master key only took 5 minutes to search and find, if that was the case every time, it would be a great world. But unfortunately, that's very time consuming, or maybe to find a particular key or asset or needing a key that for use. So that lost time to be able to take and how to really affects the cost of not properly managing keys. Or the rekey or the equipment costs, the replacement equipment costs that may be entailed. Maybe it's a vehicle where a check engine light wasn't properly reported and now needs to be serviced, or has taken a extra time to be able to service. Or maybe it's a radio or a laptop that is a pooled asset that no one has alerted the IT department that it needs to be serviced. The liability, obviously, with our universities and our campuses, with an increasing number of people, there's always a chance with theft or misuse of a particular asset. And then prone to human error. A lot of we see with issuance of keys or returning of keys or an asset, a lot of it's not malicious. Sometimes it's just an accidental walk-off that someone didn't realize that they had a particular asset or a key in their pocket. Maybe it's a contractor that accidentally walked off with it. But that doesn't really make us rest easy at night, that knowing that someone maybe had a key in their possession over a period of time, and what that potential key could have gone to. And then lastly, the reduced ability to enforce protocol. Run into a lot of campuses and a lot of universities that maybe their key and asset management protocol is antiquated, or it's very unclear, or maybe it's different for different departments and people aren't aware of what it all entails of how to get a key or an asset or return it, or adhering to keys being returned at a particular time, or an asset being available for another individual. So we take those 6 items, those 6 areas into consideration. We look at really adding the value of better management. So in addition to reducing costs or properly management of keys and equipment, we look at 4 other areas. The first one's time savings and efficiency. Worked with a large university a few years back, and they did their own in-house audit of and it was a fairly large university. They did their own in-house audit of how much time and one employee, in essence, wasted a day to either get a key or return a key. And they found an employee was wasting up to an hour and a half a day, either waiting for keys to be issued or waiting for maybe a manager to come back to return those keys. So a lot of time and efficiency that people really aren't really usually aware of, because it's something that, you know, it's not an immediate dollar that's impacted, but obviously time and dollars equate to in a lot of circumstances. So the time and efficiency come into play. The second is enforcing enhancing protocol. Now that we know that there's a system that can be in place to make it maybe just as simple as ensuring that keys are returned in a particular time, or an asset is back in a compartment and charging, so the next individual is being able to use that asset at its highest charge level, or making sure that that asset is operational and doesn't have a fault that's maybe applied to it. Better utilization and improved processes around equipment use. Just mentioned being able to maybe have equal rotation of a fleet vehicle, so individuals aren't using a particular piece of equipment or a vehicle over and over again, and increasing the depreciation cost of that. So maybe it's a first in, first out that allows even rotation of a particular asset or key. And then the value of the audit trail and tracking in the data. This is where it really comes into play of understanding maybe when keys have been removed or returned, but really maybe dialing in how a particular key or what a particular key or asset's being used for throughout the day. So being able to have that information, being able to know how keys are used, when they're returned, who high-level keys of what maybe the reason why they were issued, all can lead us to have a better understanding of how key and assets are used throughout our facilities. So kind of mentioned just that time and efficiency that we talked about with the university that I had mentioned. So we look at a typical just key issuance, and this is typically around centralization of key or asset issuance. We really need to think about the time loss inefficient key and device access management creates just in one day. So just a few steps. So if we let's just take as an example, maybe an employee must travel to a central office to check out that item. The employee must wait for a manager maybe to issue them a key, or maybe someone that is there from an administration purpose to hand the key over to that individual. Maybe the manager is pulled away from other activities to issue that item and document the usage. So it's the manual process of someone physically hands the keys to the individual. And then the employee must travel to the central office, must travel from the central office to the work area. So if we take all of those steps and then we take the employee returns at the end of the day, we're looking at what we find anywhere between 10 to 20 minutes, which doesn't seem a whole lot for that individual. But what if we take not only the first shift, but we take multiple individuals on the second shift, and then maybe a third shift with multiple individuals. So that time starts to easily accumulate with taking those steps from a time and efficiency perspective. So an employee university that loses anywhere between 10 to 120 minutes of productivity each day, when employees can lose up to that much time when an employee is not relying on an issuance or return of a single key or device. And then if we take what happens when a key or device is not returned on the time or is misplaced during a work shift? How much time then is taken for someone to identify it or figure out that it's missing at all? So a lot of that time can come into play that a lot of universities tend not to think about, because of it's something that doesn't maybe impact them every day, but it can accumulate over a period of time. So what we talk about is typically at Tracka here, we typically talk about decentralization of key and asset management. Put the assets and the keys where people use them, especially when you get into larger campuses or universities where it may take a period of time to travel across campus, and that we know that time it takes to travel across campus, not only the time, but Also, the potential to increase that risk of an asset being used, lost, stolen, used, abused. So the first one is really increasing that employee productivity time really increases because they're not wasting or misusing their time in what typically should be a travel from the central office to where they're doing their work, which is a 5 minute, but somehow turns into maybe a more lengthy period of time. And then the manager productivity time increases as well. See certain scenarios where maybe managers are huddle employees together at the beginning of the day, issue keys, and then they have to rehuddle back again at the end of the day to have those keys returned. So being able to increase the productivity time of maybe a manager in those type of situations. And then the last one is the chance or delay of a shift startup due to missing keys and equipment. So maybe it's a key that should have been returned by the first shift that I'm looking at. Maybe it's a key ring that or an asset that I need to use, or a high-level key that should have been returned, but now I have to wait or I have to search for that individual. Or maybe when a contractor comes on site, we've all faced this where that maybe individuals are coming down off ladders or having to meet that contractor or to go through the process or hand over those keys or that particular asset that may need to be used. So we look at increasing security and operational efficiency. It's really into what we see four areas. The first one, as we mentioned, is decentralization. Putting the assets and keys where the individuals or the users are going to use those and eliminate that potential walking across campus or risk of a lost or misused key or asset. And then the second is automation, allowing the staff to access items they need in seconds without maybe going through an arduous process, or maybe a key that's needed, a high-level key that's needed after hours where that manual process isn't available, that they can still have that audit ease of access and still have that ease of access, but still have that audit and accountability. And then monitoring, retain that audit trail for all transactions, alert managers maybe of overdue items and authorized attempts. We have within one of our feature sets is called an item overdue. So allowing a software administrator to put a curfew on a particular key or asset to alert that key hasn't been returned in a particular time, or monitoring through email notifications of knowing of when a particular high-level key or when a user's used a key or maybe a key has not been returned, all having that insight that currently right now is very hard to be able to dial into, that is all can be all automated and have that greater understanding of what's going on through your key and asset management system. And then the last one is what we see more and more is they view key and asset management as an extension of their access control system on campus. So being able to manage access to keys and assets, just like you would managing access to doors for individuals, being able to do that within your existing access control platforms that you may have on campus and as well. So decreases that database management, it creates that extension that you're not only managing access to doors, but managing access to keys that have access to doors. So enforcing, enhancing protocol, really strengthening the protocols on our campus that relies on productivity, safety, and compliance. The first one is holding staff accountable for keys and equipment when starting time. We talked about this a little bit already, but employees no longer say they spent 30 minutes trying to find a key or a manager that wasn't available to sign out a device. It's very automated. They can go to the cabinet, they can go to the locker to be able to have those assets and keys available. So it eliminates that potential downtime. Restrict when a particular user can use a key or an asset. So if it's a work shift environment, we know that maybe that in certain facilities, an employee that works between 7 to 4:30 that doesn't need access to a high-level key outside of that window or outside of their work shift. So being able to, right now, instead of having 24/7 access to a particular key or asset, maybe it's being able to paint in those restrictions, to eliminate unauthorized access, or to be ensure that a key or asset is available for use for users that are gaining access when they shouldn't have that key. And then being able to ensure assets or keys are available for use. So if it's a situation where maybe a particular fleet vehicle needs to be available for a department or a user, or it's a contractor coming on site where they are going to need specific high-level keys, being able to reserve those keys or assets to ensure that they're available for use for users as well. Notification. So when we look at a Tracka system or any type of key management system, one of the beauties of systems like this is it can provide a 50,000-foot view if you so desire, or it can be very granular. So there are certain feature sets that we noticed within a lot of our users that when they're looking at a Tracka system or any type of key and asset management system. But one of the huge benefits is it allows them to receive notifications, as I mentioned, with emails or with into the software, or reporting from that perspective, to understand or see what's going on, just from a daily system activity, to really free them of maybe doing internal audits or time consuming of tracking down who may have a key or when a key is supposed to be returned. And then also being able to manage by exception, receive those email notifications when a process isn't properly followed. Maybe it's as simple as when returning a radio or a laptop or a tablet, that device should be put on charge, or when a asset is returned, understanding that excuse me, understanding that if that item has a fault that has applied to it, maybe it's a check engine light, maybe it's a cracked screen, maybe it's a low battery, those type of things, that those can be logged, and a IT manager or a fleet manager can receive notifications and be proactive in being able to repair or replace those type of assets. Or maybe a key that should have been handed over to another individual that wasn't, or maybe items that were a key or asset that was handed over to another individual and they returned it, and that's not adhering to protocol. So really being able to, through notifications and through reporting and through event activity, being able really to dial in on how key and assets, and ensuring that those policies and procedures are followed. The value of better equipment manager. The first one's accountability, and we use a line from Stephen Covey, where accountability breeds responsibility. So we notice when a Tracka system has been implemented, whether it's around keys or whether it's around assets, human behavior starts to change. They start to treat the asset or the item as their own, so they're more careful with the use, or they're more inclined to adhere to those policies and procedures that they maybe had not been in the past, all leading to the users are being held accountable, and assets, we know, are treated more as their own, so it reduces that potential for any work downtime, any use or abuse that may lead to any of that fall down. Maintenance costs are decreased because assets, vehicles aren't needing to be serviced or repaired or replaced, because people are more careful, they're more accountable for their use of that particular key or asset. Ensuring devices are in charge and ready for use. So not only keys, but you've heard me say the word asset over and over again. So it could be a laptop, it could be a tablet, it could be a radio, it could be a vehicle, it could be any type of asset, a handheld device that we see more and more universities go to, whether it's pooled tablets or employee issuance of those tablets or devices, that has the ability to have not only secured and stored in a locker compartment, but also being able to be on charge. So that asset is going to be at its highest charge level available for that next user. Charge detection alerts users or administrators the device has been returned and not uncharged, one of those many notifications. And then utilizing a first in, first out feature that allows for even rotation of devices, not only with now that we have with our lockers, but now that we also have with our keys and our key cabinets, maybe around those fleet vehicles, to ensure that the even use of that asset. And then also, it also eliminates maximum utilization. It ran into one university where they had some newer vehicles, and when a user would come in, the fleet administrator would tend to always issue the newer vehicle, but they were finding out that new vehicle the mileage was increasing significantly on it. And so what Tracka allowed them to be able to do is see that issuance and maybe dial back on who has access to that and increase access to other vehicles. So they're spreading out the use and the depreciation and eliminating that potential favoritism that people tend to want to always use the brand new vehicle or a brand new asset. Being able to log any type of fault. So this really comes into equipment and being able to repair and service an asset in a timely manner to ensure that they're available for use. So users that can report equipment issues can be done right at the locker or right at the cabinet, which eliminates the potential of the email that never gets sent or the work order that never gets created, to be able to possibly quarantine an asset. So it eliminates the use of that asset until that vehicle, that laptop has been serviced. Where the IT manager or the fleet manager can receive those notifications to be able to repair that particular asset or device. And then, as I mentioned, prevent other users that asset's been logged, so it's not a continuing use of an asset that maybe has that check engine light on the fleet vehicle that we have found that the check engine light's been that vehicle's been used with the check engine light for the last month and no one's recorded it. To be able to quarantine a particular asset to be able to ensure proper servicing in a timely manner. Just a few case studies. If you go on our website, the first one is Western Connecticut State. If you go to, you'll see here in a couple slides our website information or contact information. But this is a great case study involving where they had an existing key management system that wasn't really meeting their needs and were having some fall downs with it. And what their existing system was doing and how the solutions that Tracka provided for them that were different than that they had, and the reason why they decided to move away from what they had and move to a Tracka solution. So that's a great case study with Western Connecticut State. And then another one that we have is Rochester Institute of Technology. This is actually done, this is around their armory that we have designed some custom locker solutions around their long guns that they have in their armory that they have at Rochester Institute of Technology. But then also one of the requirements that they had was being able to integrate into their access control system. And in this case, it was a Linnell access control system. So not only having a custom locker solutions, and obviously they've also deployed Tracka key cabinets as well, but being able to manage that from their existing Linnell system. We talked about it a few slides ago of being able from a database management perspective, but also from just streamlining workflow and assigning management, be able to do that from one platform instead of having to tie into multiple platforms to be able to manage their access to these lockers. So as we finish up here, it's really Tracka really helps with increasing the overall security intelligence by adding layers of visibility for your staff activity beyond the time punch and building access data. So it's being able to take those keys, those assets, managing them in a very effective way to reduce that maybe that administrative time, to create the policies and procedures around that, create accountability, to ensure assets are available for use, to understand how an asset or key has been utilized throughout the day, being able to see, have notifications, to be able to have that data at your fingertips without having to run any type of bulky internal audit, or to maybe just track down someone that has a particular key or asset, and then being able to manage those all within one platform, whether an access control platform or if it's the Tracka web software platform that allows you to be able to have that understanding and being able to have that ease of management. With that, just some, as we finish up here, if there are questions, I know Billy is going to has a few questions. Looks like that she may have from the group, but just for more information around Tracka, around our key and asset management solutions, you can visit Tracka Americas at www.tracka.com, or you can email us at info@trackausa.com. With that, Billy, I'll turn it over to see what questions there may be from the audience.
I just sent a note out to everyone to say, if they have a question for you, please put it in the chat box, and hopefully we'll have some questions come in. But this is a really good presentation today, so I really appreciate knowing that this technology is available. So give people a second or two to possibly put a question in the chat box. While we're waiting, Drew, can you tell us how long Tracka has been around?
Yep, that's a good question. We've been around since the mid-90s. Our U.S. office is in Orlando. We actually started around an opportunity for managing keys and assets with British Airways around London, Heathrow, and Gatwick airports. And how it really started about is around their airside ground vehicles. And what they noticed was their maintenance costs on their airside ground vehicles were significantly increasing because of how the keys were issued. And there really wasn't any way of auditing, knowing who the last individual was that returned the vehicle. So when that individual would return a vehicle, maybe with a flat tire or a dent, they really didn't have an understanding of how that happened, or maybe intentional or accidental. And so what they noticed is when they deployed Tracka, they noticed that their maintenance costs significantly were reduced, because we talked about accountability. People started treating the assets as their own because now there's an audit. They know how often, when that key was issued, who used that key. And then more importantly, they also noticed and then dialed in on the utilization of that asset. And they noticed that on an average day, they were only using 25 to 30% of their fleet. So they actually sold off a percentage of their vehicles and got a return on an investment. So that is more of that dials more into just understanding how the key or asset was issued and returned, but more understanding how that key was utilized throughout the day, and being able to dial in and having that information available to have that return on investment. So we've been around since the mid-90s. Our U.S. office is in Orlando. We're in Orlando for more than just the warm weather. One of our largest end users is based in Orlando, and I'm sure you probably can guess who that is. It's the one with Mickey Mouse ears, where Disney World Magic Kingdom have approximately 300 plus Tracka key cabinets around each of their properties to be able to manage employees. that should not be taking keys home, especially hourly employees that shouldn't be issued keys to be taken home. How are those keys issued and returned to all those? And as you know, Disney doesn't have just a handful of employees to those thousands of employees to be able to do it in a time and a very efficient manner, but be able to have that accountability as well.
Okay, thank you. We do have questions coming in. Can the Tracka system be integrated into the current maintenance work order system?
We don't. Most of our integrations are with access control, so we don't have an API SDK with any current work order systems. We do have available for purchase for of use our API SDK, that if for some reason someone wanted to create a custom integration into a work order system, they can purchase our API SDK web services to be able to do that. But we don't have anything. Right now, our current integrations are predominantly with access control, Active Directory. So whether it be Linnell, Software House, AMAG, S2, Open Options, RS2, Genetec, those are the access control platforms that we typically integrate, have an active integration with, being able to manage key or assets from those platforms.
Okay, our next question is, what is the typical lifespan of the key boxes, and what are the most common failure/repair points?
That's a good question. I've been with Tracka a little over 6.5 years. I've worked with end users that have Tracka cabinets still in use from 2008, 2009. I would say a Tracka cabinet, the average life cycle, you're going to get easy 9 to 10 years, if not longer, from it. With any type of hardware, there's obviously things that need to be upgraded over time. From a hardware perspective, I would say our cabinets are very stable. The most common questions that we get into our technical support in Orlando are typically around software related questions. So maybe it's a question of how to administer a particular feature, or they are needing to upgrade their software related questions. There are very few moving parts in the Tracka cabinet, so we don't really tend to see any hardware failures. It's more around software related questions that our technical support team fields.
Okay, well, thank you. Our next question, does the system provide remote access controls to buildings?
If the question is, can I, as a software administrator, get into the software and remotely release a key to an individual, the answer is yes. So the typical modes of authentication to a cabinet, as you can see probably on those cabinets, there is a card reader. So taking that credential that the current staff and employees have, and presenting that credential that they use for access control to the reader at the cabinet, and being able to sign access based on the user's profile of what they should gain access to or be restricted. However, if there's certain situations where maybe an employee forgets their credential, or they need to just on a case-by-case remotely release a key to an individual, that can be done by a software administrator in the Tracka web software platform.
Okay, our next question is, could the system be tied into an online app for users to reserve items?
So a couple things. An app is in development, but one of the things to keep in mind is the Tracka web software is browser-based. So as long as a user has the software permissions that they've been assigned, but as long as they can gain access to their intranet, they have the ability to gain access to the Tracka web front-end application. So, so if they've been granted from a high-level software administrator with a username and login, and then they can go onto their intranet, their internal browser on their network, then they can gain access to the Tracka web software to potentially reserve keys under their user profile. There is on our R&D roadmap, there is in development a Tracka web application app, but we've noticed with Tracka web, since it is browser-based, that there are certain tablet or iPad, Microsoft Surface devices that you can have the optimization allowed, that you can manage. You can, in essence, gain access to your campus browser and be able to assign access or grant access to keys or assets.
Okay, thank you. And just one other question is, the website that you have there, the www.tracka.com, does that have all of your products listed?
Yes, it will have all of our cabinets that we have. We build out, you can see the different cabinets that in this image here on the screen based on the key capacity. So whether it's anywhere between 10 keys or up to 180, or be able to expand it out to 720 key positions, you'll see all the information around our key cabinets and the key capacity, as well as our lockers and our different locker solutions, whether it be around laptops, tablets, modular lockers that we typically are custom solutions around what we see maybe around that Rochester Institute of Technology is a great example, around firearms, tasers, handheld devices like radios, those type of things. But you can visit at Tracka.com, to see all of our solutions that we have available.
Okay, we had another question just come in that says, are these cabinets surface mounted or insert into the wall?
They're surface mounted, so they typically are mounted on a wall. They're not recessed. They are internal use only, so from that perspective, but they are typically surface mounted.
Okay. Well, that looks like we're at the end of our questions, so I'm going to give everyone a few minutes back of their day. And to Dirk, thank you so much for this very informative webinar today. And to our attendees, as always, thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. So until next time, be safe, stay healthy, and be kind to one another. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye now.